Hello, everyone, and welcome to another Mini Sky Tonight. So just last week, we had the 4th of July where we got to see the beautiful fireworks displays across the country. So allow me to show you some of the unique features that you can see through the month of July, including a planetary conjunction, as well as a couple of unique sites, including checking out the Dragon Crew as it goes across the sky, as well as constellations, planets, and other things that you can see throughout the month of July. So on July 12th, tonight, shortly after sunset, roughly around about 9 o'clock in the evening, if you look towards the western horizon, you'll see this kind of very bright star and a little faint star right next to it. This is the planetary conjunction of Venus and the little Mars right next to it. So you can see two planets in your field of view. So if you zoom in on it, you would see this in your field of view. So they're kind of relatively far apart, but you can definitely see them in the sky. In fact, let's take an up close and personal view of these two planets and kind of roughly an idea of what you would see. So zooming here in on Venus, as you can see, Venus is in a gibbous phase, so you get to see a good bright version of Venus if you have a pair of binoculars or a small telescope and you zoom in on it. In fact, I did an entire video on the planet of Venus. So if you want to check out that video and some of the details of our sister planet that went wrong, I'll leave a link up here and you can check out that video I did about Venus. But as I mentioned, Venus is our sister problem that has our sister planet that has failed, and she's got a lot of problems, including she is the hottest planet in the solar system. She's often referred to as the early morning or early evening star because since she's close to the sun, you can either see her in the early evening just after sunset or early morning just before sunrise. And the other times she's too close to the sun to be seen. And the reason being why she's such a brilliant star is because her thick atmosphere has what is known as a high albedo, meaning it's very reflective. Because it has such a thick atmosphere, much of that light from the sun gets reflected back out. So that's why she is such a bright beacon in the nighttime sky. But let's hop over to Mars and check out the red planet, where in the future, we're hoping to send astronauts to explore the surface of this planet. So the way I'm zooming in on these planets is I'm using my scroll wheel. The planetarium program I'm using to show you the beautiful nighttime sky is called Stellarium. It's a free planetarium program, and you can download it for your own devices at home. In fact, if I recall correctly, they just added an update to be able to download it to your cell phones as well. So you can enjoy it, explore with it, and fiddle around with it to try to get to know the nighttime sky better. It's a really easy to use program, and it has so much to offer. And they're constantly updating it. As I mentioned at the intro of this video, it even tracks satellites and some launch vehicles as well. So, looking at the beautiful surface of Mars, you can see Mars in all of its glory. And if you have a powerful enough telescope, you might be able to get to see the northern pole of the planet. So try to see if you can get a nice view of the ice caps of Mars, if you have a good telescope. But if you're interested in some of the details of Mars, I did a video talking about Mars, and I'll leave a link up here, and you can check out that planet as well. But some of the unique features of Mars I wanted to point out just really quick. This long crack right here is Valles Marineris, the Mariner Valley. It is the grandest of Grand Canyons in the solar system. It is so long that it would stretch from New York to Los Angeles. And it's so wide that San Antonio can fit inside of it. And it's as deep as Mount Everest is high. So if some of you are following along with the Perseverance and Ingenuity mission that's currently going on Mars right now, the reason being why they sent that kind of unique helicopter Ingenuity there is because they eventually want to have a couple of drones on Mars to go into places that most rovers can't go, one of which is Valles Marineris, or the Mariner Valley. Because it's just so deep and so wide, it has so many terrains to go across, it would not be safe for a rover to go into that valley, and especially since many rovers depend upon solar power. So they would not get enough sunlight to be able to explore thoroughly, whereas a drone of some kind could go into there and explore freely and then come back out and recharge if it needed to. Nonetheless, the second biggest feature on the surface of Mars is this kind of weird bump on the surface. It is the grandest volcano in the solar system. It's Olympus Mons, or Mount Olympus. It's taller than Mount Everest. And it is so big that if we brought it back to Earth, it would cover the entire state of Texas. It's huge. All right, let's zoom out and actually check out a couple of other different things going on as well. Most notably, if you have a quick eye, roughly around about 9 o'clock in the evening, if you face towards the southeast, and you have to have a sharp eye, and you can only see it from San Antonio or further south. But if you have a sharp eye and if you look towards the southeast, you'll see kind of like a satellite that seems to be tracking very fast. It'll be the crew of the Dragon 2. It's a artificial satellite. So you'll be able to check out this unique satellite going across the sky, and it's really fast. Just to give you a rough idea how fast, I pulled up the time here. So it zips by the sky within a couple of minutes. So just shortly before 9 o'clock, it'll start rising in the south. Come 9 o'clock, it'll be in the southeast. And then just a few minutes later, it'll set. So it'll go by fast. So you have to keep your eye out roughly around about 9 o'clock at night. The best way to find it at exactly 9 o'clock, look in the curve of this constellation right here. This is the constellation Scorpius, the Scorpion. So if you're familiar with the Disney movie Moana, this is known as Maui's fishhook. So Disney actually put a constellation in their movies, and you can see the kind of hook of the fishhook. So if you look in the center of this fishhook around about 9 o'clock on July 12th, you should be able to find the crew of the Dragon 2. Nonetheless, let's set the sun a little bit more so where we can actually see some constellations. So getting close to roughly about 9:30. And if, of course, with the western horizon right next to Mars and Venus, you have the beautiful crescent moon. So let's take a look at that really quick. So it's just a thin sliver. And I honestly find it easier to observe the moon with a pair of binoculars or a small telescope when it's in its crescent or first quarter phases, because to me, it's easier to check out some of the unique features on the surface of the moon when it's not so bright. Because when it's in its full phase, yes, you get to see all these beautiful details, but the moon is so incredibly bright, it's just really hard to take in over a long period of time. So to me, I find it easier to observe the moon and to look carefully at some of the craters when it's in its crescent phase, because then there's not a lot of bright light. Plus, the easiest way to check out some of the craters is by looking at the daytime-nighttime line, roughly around about here. This daytime-nighttime line is known as the terminator line. And if you look carefully along that line, some of the shadows that are casted onto the moon kind of give you a rough idea of width and depth of some of the many craters on the surface of the moon. All right, But now let's take a look at some actual constellations, shall we? So over here towards the southeast, as I mentioned, you see this J-shaped constellation, which is known as Scorpius, the Scorpion. The bright star in the constellation Scorpius is this star right here, known as Antares. It's a huge supergiant star, and it has this bright orange color, signifying the heart of the scorpion, so to say. But for stars, color is an indicator of temperature. The more red in color you are, the cooler in temperature you are compared to the sun. The more blue in color you are, the hotter in temperature you are compared to the sun. In fact, if people are interested in me doing a video talking about the HR diagram, which is this useful tool in astronomy that categorizes many stars in terms of its mass, its temperature, its spectral type, and so many others, leave a comment down below saying you would be interested in it. Nonetheless, towards the southeast, right next to the constellation Scorpius, is this unique teapot-shaped constellation. This is the constellation Sagittarius. Now, to me, I find it difficult to see a half man, half horse out of this. So I like to call it the teapot myself. In fact, the teapot for Sagittarius is the asterism for Sagittarius, or a nickname. The great thing about many asterisms is that you can call a constellation whatever you want using an asterism if it helps you remember a unique part of that constellation or something that makes it easier for you to remember it and or find it. So if calling it the teapot makes sense to you, by all means, go for it. To me, I honestly call it the teapot because here's the handle, here's the lid, here's the pot itself, and here's the spout, and it looks like there's steam coming off of it. So I call it the teapot. But speaking of the teapot, here near the center, like where the steam is pointing towards, along this line right here is the Milky Way galaxy, and Sagittarius points towards the center of our galaxy. So you'll see if you go out beyond the city limits out into the dark of the country, you should be able to see this dark kind of light and wispy cloud that goes across the sky. Even on a clear night, you should be able to see it. But it's actually not a cloud, it's our own galaxy seen edge on. And it has thousands and thousands and thousands of stars. In the east, you'll see three bright stars that kind of form a triangle. These three bright stars are each in different constellations, but they create the asterism known as the summer triangle or the navigator's triangle, because many navigators use these three stars during the summertime as a means of guidance to point towards other constellations, as well as an idea of which directions to go. The top star of the summer triangle is this star right here called Vega, which is in the constellation of Lyra, the lyre. And of course, as you can tell by looking at this star, it kind of has this bluish color, so it's on the hotter side of stars. Hidden within the constellation Lyra, if you have a really good pair of binoculars or a good telescope, hidden between these two stars right here is a really unique object. So in fact, just bear with me because sometimes it doesn't quite click on it. It's right there. Thank you. If you have a pair of binoculars or a small telescope, look in between these two stars and just slightly underneath, and you'll see this unique object. This is known as the Ring Nebula. It's a telltale sign of what will happen to our star when it passes away. What's going on inside our sun right now is a process known as nuclear fusion. And as lighter elements are being rammed together to produce light, heat, and energy, eventually it's going to start to run out. And so our star will start to fuse the heavier elements that it created. It'll go from hydrogen to helium to carbon to nitrogen to oxygen and so on further down the line. But in the case of our star, since it's a relatively average size star, it'll stop roughly around about oxygen and a few other elements. And when that happens, when it realizes it doesn't have much to start to fuse anymore, it will collapse down its core to keep the fusion process going, and then it will just puff out the outer shells that it doesn't need anymore, creating this cosmic ash ball around the central core. And that's what we see right here. The ring nebula is basically the remains of a dead star. This tiny little star in the center of this big ring is the core remnant of the star that once was. The bottom left star of the summer triangle is called Deneb, which is part of the constellation known as Cygnus, the swan. Just imagine like a stick figure swan, if you will. But at the nose of the swan is a really unique star. In fact, it is a double star. It's called Alberio A and B. I sometimes nickname this star the Cub Scout star because if you zoom in on this particular star, you'll see two stars that have broad colors. One is a deep gold and the other one is a bright blue, which is the colors of the Cub Scouts. So if you want to check out an example of beautiful colors and stars, check out the star Alberio at the tip of the constellation. The bottom right star of the summer triangle is called Altair, which is a part of the constellation Aquila, the eagle. Imagine, you will, like an eagle like on the back of a quarter. I know sometimes it's really hard to see some of these different constellations, and that is okay. Because you have to understand the ancient people didn't have some of the modern conveniences we have today for entertainment at night. They didn't have books, magazines, computers, nothing. All they had was a campfire and the stars. And they would gather around the campfire to tell tales of death, danger, endless love, and place those stories in the stars. And they would share those stories with everyone that they traveled with. So that's why it looks like such a weird connect the dots. And sometimes you see what should be like these amazing epic creatures, but they look so odd. All right, so we checked out the planet Mars and Venus in the early evening sky, but let's check out the early morning sky really quick to see a couple of other different planets. So let's progress time just a little bit more. So roughly around about midnight. So in the midnight sky, if you face towards the southeast, you'll see two bright stars, if you will, in the southeast sky. These two bright stars are the planets Saturn and Jupiter. So if you want to check out these two beautiful large planets, just stay up a little bit longer past midnight. As I mentioned with the constellation Sagittarius, here's the center of the Milky Way. All right, so let's progress time just a little bit more to the early morning sky. Too far. So in the early morning sky, just before sunrise in the northeast, you can see the planet Mercury. It's really close to the horizon, but close to roughly around about 6 a.m. just before the sun rises. Look towards the eastern horizon and you can see the planet Mercury. So you can see at least 5 planets from the early evening to the early morning sky. So here are a few constellations and planets and things that you can see through the month of July. If you have any questions or comments, leave it down in the comments below. If you have any suggestions for future topics, leave it down in the comments as well. And until next time, stay safe, stay healthy, and as always, never stop learning.